All right, what's up everybody? Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be doing a reaction video to a video by Starlo Gets Reel, Steve Starling. He's kind of like an Australian fishing legend, and he's just dropped a couple of videos doing BFS fishing and caused a little bit of controversy. You know, we'll watch the videos and we'll see what happens.
Called BFS fishing. It stands for Bait Finesse System, and it refers to a whole genre of finesse fishing that involves casting ultralight weights off bait caster reels.
All right, that's fine. Ultralight weights with this reel, maybe not the best reel for ultralight weights. We'll see what rod he's using. He's got that spooled up with a lot of line there. Let's
Fair income.
see what's
Now,
happening.
traditionally, we've regarded anything lighter than about 6 or 7 grams as fairly problematic to use with a bait caster.
Wow.
When we need to cast something lighter than that, traditionally we go to sophisticated lightweight spin gear. That's what I've always done. But there's a whole group of anglers out there who've embraced BFS, and they're chucking stuff down to a gram and even less, apparently. It took off in Japan.
0.56 grams.
Taken America by storm, and it has quite a few fans here in Australia as well. And I get messages all the time saying, when are you going to do something on BFS gear? To be honest, I've been a little bit cynical about it. Why reinvent the wheel? Ultralight sophisticated spin gear is so good at casting light weights. Why would you make life difficult for yourself?
Well, making life difficult for yourself, well, there's definitely gear where you can cast, under a gram, and it's going to be way more convenient than using spin gear. Well, once you get used to it, of course. Shorter rods, more accurate casting, especially if you're, wading a creek or something, casting into snags. I personally find it a lot more easier and more accurate to cast, and a lot more fun too. It's just like, throwing a frisbee or a tennis ball or something. It's just so much easier just to accurately cast. That's just my opinion.
Trying to do it with a bait caster. So I thought I'd better bite the bullet and give it a go. I got Shimano to send me some. They've sent me the SLX BFS bait caster reel, which has got a super shallow free running spool, very lightweight spool, and it's all tricked up for lightweight casting. They sent me a light T-curve.
Tricked up for lightweight casting. Out of the box, I haven't used this reel personally, but from what I've heard, out of the box, this is more of a kind of a 3-grammy kind of reel. This isn't, bombing trout magnets over the horizon. So if he thinks that BFS is about, throwing the gram stuff or whatever, and then he's got this gear, then we might have a problem.
Bait caster rod. I don't really know if this would qualify as a BFS rod, because its minimum casting weight rating is 7 grams, which is well above the BFS.
7 grams, the minimum casting weight on this rod. Okay, he's got to be chucking stuff over 7 grams, and then we're sort of verging into the not really BFS category. Although I'm not too strict on what is and what isn't BFS. I mean, like, 10 grams can still be on BFS. If it's on BFS tackle, it doesn't really matter how much the lure weighs. A hard body lure can weigh 10 grams. But yeah, 7 grams, it's on for the low end. That's not what I would classify as a BFS rod, definitely not.
Reckon they're casting with this sort of gear. I got hold of the lightest braid that I could find, which was some 6-pound Kairiki Plus, which is ultra skinny. I managed to squeeze 100.
Now, obviously, it goes without saying, this guy is, Australian fishing legend, some may call him. He's obviously sponsored by Shimano, so let's just take that into account.
150 meters of that onto the shallow spool. I've rigged it up with a little tiny Ray Broughton Bimmy minnow, which weighs about 3.5 grams, I think, at the moment.
Okay, boom, there we go. There's our first issue. He's throwing a 3.5 gram lure on a rod that has a minimum 7 gram casting weight. He's setting himself up for failure.
So that's certainly lighter than anything I would normally try and throw on a bait caster. Look, I love my bait caster fishing. I love catching fish on bait casters. There's just something about the control that they offer, but I've always used them on heavier lures. I'll be keen to see how this goes, and I'll give you my honest opinion of it. I'm expecting to be a little bit underwhelmed, but we'll see if we can take the BS out of BFS.
Well, let's see.
I've headed to a small coastal lake not far from home for this trial. The lake's closed to the sea at the moment and recent rain has its level right up into the tussocks and timber, so I'm hoping a few flatties and bream might be sniffing around the edges. Ooh, I do like that drag clicker. Smooth too. Okay, first cast, and it'll have to be a backhander because of the trees.
All right here, I see that he's got about maybe 2 feet of line out from the tip. Not what I would do, maybe with a spin rod, but for some reason having maybe, like 2 to 6 inches of line from the tip, that seems to be what's optimal for me and what most other people seem to be doing.
Overhead. Not the most auspicious start. A backlash.
Let's have another look at that cast actually.
Too. Okay, first cast, and it'll have to be a
Right,
backhander
cast. Let's
because
see how
of the
the rod
trees
loads.
overhead.
I don't know, he casted that about, 12 meters, maybe more, I don't know, something like that. But you could see that rod just didn't load up on that cast. I mean, if you're really in a bind and you had this rod and, for whatever reason you needed to cast this lure, I'd just be absolutely ripping into it to try and get the rod to load up. And also having the lure closer to the tip may, assist in getting that tip to load up a bit better.
Not the most auspicious start. A backlash straight away. At least it's not too bad. It'll easily pull out.
So what I'd recommend here, if any of you guys are getting into BFS for the first time or bait casters for the first time, just crank your brakes up, reasonably high to begin with. Have a, ease a cast out there, then crank it down and so on and so forth, and keep going until you can cast with confidence with the lowest brake setting that you can get away with without having any overruns or backlashes. And in terms of the spool tension knob, just have it adjusted so that there's just a tad amount of side to side play, so that there's no extra resistance on that spool with the spool tension knob. And then just from there, adjust your braking as needed based on the lure weight and maybe wind conditions and things like that. You may need to casting stroke even, and the type of rod that you're using, you may need to adjust the brake slightly. But let's continue.
There we go. And then it's really important to tension the line between my fingers as I crank in the slack.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Lovely smooth reel.
You don't want any sort of loose loops on the reel.
Okay, let's see if I can do a bit better this time.
Oh, he's really...
That's more like it. Reasonable distance too.
He's impressed with that cast, but he really seemed to ease that one out there, and the rod didn't really seem to load up whatsoever.
There's nothing quite like the feel and control of working a hard-bodied lure off a bait caster. Notice that I'm building lots of pauses into the retrieve too.
I got to say, these voiceovers that he does, really good. I mean, he's been on television before, I don't know. He was on TV for maybe 20 years or something like that as a presenter on a fishing show. So obviously he's got that experience, but yeah, his YouTube channel is quite good.
A couple of loose loops on that one as well. More of an overrun than a backlash. But it's really important to get all those loose loops out.
Yep,
and to tension the line again as I recover it. I'm using the reel exactly as it came straight out of the box, but I reckon I might need to tweak the magnetic cast control a bit.
Yeah, I don't think he needs to tweak the braking. It's purely a matter of it's the wrong rod and he's probably got too much line. I mean, you could have that amount of line, but it's not optimal.
I must say I'm not wrapped in the brake control on this SLX. It's hard to read the numbers and even harder to turn the dial. I think I moved it.
I think he just moved it. It looked like 3 positions or something when he was only meant to move it 1. It looked like it just slipped. So we'll see what happens here.
That does seem better.
Maybe he had better thumb control on that one, even though we lowered the brakes.
Nice. I reckon I'm casting that little lure at least 70% as far as I would off spin gear. Plenty far enough to catch a fish anyway. But they're just not playing, so I'll keep moving. I want to hear that drag buzz. Ooh, that was a nice one.
He seemed to get into that cast a little bit better.
But I'm still getting the odd bird's nest too. It's annoying. And I'm not catching anything. I've just about had enough of this, I reckon.
I don't know if it's just me or if it's others, but overhead casting, that's when I get bird's nests most often than not. I'm a backhand caster mostly, a little bit of forehand, but overhead not so much. But yeah, that's when I seem to get the most backlashes.
Last time I was at this spot, and admittedly the conditions were a little bit different, but I did pretty well. I caught some bream and some flathead. And of course I was using spin gear, and I think covering the water a bit better.
See, maybe he's had a bad day on the water here. It's not necessarily the gear, but it hasn't helped the situation. He just hasn't. Well, what if, the spin gear day, he didn't get any bites, and then he was getting tons of hits today? Then would his opinion change? Maybe. Well, all right, let's see. Let's see what he's got to say. He's just going to wrap it up here.
Well, I've given it a few hours now. I haven't caught a fish. I don't even think I've had a hit. I might have got something on spin gear. I reckon I'd have been able to cover the water more effectively. And after my initial encounter with BFS gear, I'm still left asking the same question I asked when I first found out about the method. Why? Why make something harder than it needs to be? Look, I can see that it's got certain charms. When you uncork a nice cast, it does feel really good, and the accuracy's good, but oh boy. I just think stick with spin gear. I can already imagine all the hate mail I'm going to get. And I'm not going to give up. I will give it another go, but yeah, I'm not really convinced. Let me know what you think down in the comments.
All right, we'll wrap up there. We'll go to the second video. He actually posted another one, got a bunch of comments saying do this, do that, and he revisited BFS. But yeah, this kind of open water fishing scenario, BFS doesn't necessarily shine over spin at all in this kind of scenario. For me personally, I do a lot of this type of fishing, and I've just figured out what type of gear that I need that best suits my needs for, targeting the species that I target in the certain water depths, and what casting distance I need, that type of thing. So I've essentially replaced my spin gear with BFS gear, which is just more fun for me. It's not necessarily like I'm not catching more fish because I'm using BFS gear, but yeah, just for that open water scenario, casting into lakes and into wide rivers, or you know what I mean by open water. It's not necessarily better than spin. It's not going to catch you more fish. But let's go over to the next video.
G'day, Starlo here. A week or so ago I made an episode about a style of fishing called BFS, which stands for Bait Finesse System. And as I explained in that episode, it's all about being able to cast really light weights off specialised bait caster gear, something we've always thought of as being really difficult to do in the past, but these days the gear is out there to enable people to cast right down to a gram and even less off a bait caster reel.
All right, I got a little theory here, and some people have also said the same thing, but I'm pretty sure Shimano is releasing the SLX BFS to the Australian market. If you were in the marketing department or whatever, and you saw that first video, would you be happy with that? I mean, he's been honest, so that's good. But is he going to sell more reels based off that first video? Well, probably not. Probably less than what they would have had he not made the video. Yeah, anyway, so I think this video is going to be something like a, hey Steve, you know, give it another crack, do this, do that, you know, get it over the line. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. What do you think? Post it in the comments. Let's crack on.
Now, I gave it a run and I was a little bit underwhelmed. My take at the end of that went something like this. After my initial encounter with BFS gear, I'm still left asking the same question I asked when I first found out about the method. Why? Why make something harder than it needs to be? I just think stick with spin gear. I can already imagine all the hate mail I'm going to get. And I'm not going to give up. I will give it another go, but yeah, I'm not really convinced. So anyway, I'm back to give it another go. I don't think you can write something off after one try. I've changed.
All right, well, yeah, that's good. You know, whether Shimano's involved in this or not doesn't really matter. But yeah, at least he's given it another crack, taking on board other people's advice and yeah, giving it another crack.
A few things. I listened to some of the advice that I got in the comments on that episode. So I've removed about half the line that I had on the reel. I had 150 metres of 6-pound braid on there. I've cut that down to about...
All right, that's good. Reducing the amount of line on the spool is going to make the spool essentially lighter. So when you're casting those lighter weights, it's just going to sort of free spool a little bit easier. So that is definitely good, and probably, maybe in my experience, less prone to backlashes in a way. Maybe.
70 metres. People tell me that'll make a difference. No one's actually been able to explain to me quite why, but I'm listening to them. I've played around with the brake mechanism. I've played around with the tension, and I found another rod. This is another 661 T-curve, but it's an earlier model. And to me, it feels a little bit lighter than the one I used last time. And it also has smaller guides and a lighter guide train. So I'm hoping that it might go a little bit better than the other one did. It's still not a full-on BFS rod, but until I get one of those, this will do. And because I don't have a proper BFS rod yet, I'm not going to try and cast super light weights. I'm going to throw this little atomic crank, which weighs 4 grams or a whisker under 4 grams. So pretty...
Yeah, I think that weighs 3.5 grams, something like that. Yeah, well, don't know if the rod is any lighter than the previous version he was using. It was a 661 T-curve. I don't know if this is an L model like the previous one, or I don't think he mentions the low-end casting weight.
Light for a bait caster, certainly lighter than anything I would have chucked in the past. Let's see how we go today. Oh, and the other difference is I'm not on the bank today. I'm out in my kayak, and a lot of people said to me, it's really well suited to kayak fishing, this BFS. So let's find out if they're right. I really want to be convinced because I love fishing with bait casters. Well out from the bank at the moment, so I'm just going to shoot out a cast. There we go. I hit that one quite hard.
Yeah, definitely his casting stroke, it wasn't loading up, and he was kind of, you know, babying it a little bit, I thought. I don't know if I didn't think about necessarily snapping the wrist or anything. It's you know, it just all comes naturally, really. But yeah, he definitely needs to load the tip up more. So let's pay attention to the rod and see if he loads it up more.
No backlash, no loose loops, and a pretty good distance. That went probably, I'd reckon, 80% as far as I would have sent it with a spin reel, and I really didn't put a heck of a lot of effort into it. So that's promising. Maybe some of these little tweaks that I've made will make the difference, and I'll become a convert to BFS yet. Ooh, too far.
Yeah, he ripped into that cast.
I actually cast up into the tree, it went so far. I'm still coming to terms with how well this thing is casting. I don't know if it was changing rods or reducing the line load or playing with the casting brakes, but something I've done has definitely made a huge difference. Also that different casting style. Snap it out there. I haven't even had a loose loop yet. It feels like the minor changes that I've made may have already made a difference. like I said, I'd really like to love this style of fishing because I do love fishing with bait casters. There's something about the control they offer, especially when you get a fish on. They can also be really accurate. Look, there are arguments about which is more accurate, spin or bait caster, and I think that has a lot more to do with the nut that holds the reel, if you know what I mean. If you're an accurate caster with spin gear, use it. If you're an accurate caster with bait casters, use them. I find that if I spend a couple of days on either style of fishing, my casting accuracy really improves. It's all about developing muscle memory and getting in practice, as with so many things in sports, I guess. All right, let's get into a zone where we might be able to find a fish or two.
Yeah, I guess I got to agree with that. Yeah, muscle memory. You can accurately cast with either spin or bait casters, but I think where the big advantage is controlling the spool with your thumb, like, distance control. As you watch your lure fly through the air, it's, heading towards the bank, the edge of the water, and you can just, put the brakes on and get that lure to stop, drop in the water, that type of thing, which with spin, I don't know. I don't think it's possible, but is it as convenient as, doing a one-handed cast and, controlling the distance with your thumb? I don't think so.
Wow, that aggressive casting style definitely does work. I'm starting to really enjoy myself and come to terms with this BFS gear. Oh,
Yeah, it's
tell
ripped
you
into
what,
that one.
I'm impressed. I might even be able to back my casting brake off a little bit in a minute and get even more distance, but I'm getting plenty of distance and it's really accurate too. I might be coming around. Maybe there's a bit less BS in BFS than I thought. I really want to catch a fish on this gear though. Oh,
That was a nice
dream.
cast.
It's so different. That wrist snap, which I would have thought would have induced backlash, it's actually...
So you just think of this that was a beautiful cast. What if you were in a close quarters situation, you got trees or whatever, you're leaning over the bank, you've only got one hand to cast, and you cast and then you stop the lure before it hits the snag or whatever with your thumb. Now with spin, do you need two hands to do that? Yeah, maybe. So that's definitely a scenario where the BFS gear has an advantage over the spin gear.
accelerating the lure off the tip, and everything's just going really smoothly. I'm not even having to put my thumb on the spool until the lure actually hits the water. It's impressive. Oh, that's a good cast. That deserves a fish. I work the lure slowly with plenty of pauses. A bait caster provides great control for this kind of lure manipulation. And the accuracy and lure control are next level. I'll see if I can get one right up in there.
So we said that accuracy and casting control is next level, but before did he say that you can cast just as good with spin? Yeah.
Oh, how good's that?
Good
I think
cast.
I might have been wrong about BFS. No one home though. I'm using a right-hand wind BFS reel, but I'd be interested in having a go with a left-handed version too. I can see some arguments for it. Certainly look the goods. One more. The fish just aren't cooperating this afternoon, but I'm getting plenty of casting practice. I've been fishing for well over an hour now and I have not had a backlash. I haven't even had a lifted loose loop. This is just a revelation. And that could make things a little bit interesting with the BFS gear. I'm going to try and obviously pick angles where I've got the wind either behind me or across me rather than punching straight into it, because I think that's one area where the BFS could let you down a little bit, is trying to cast into the wind.
Yeah, I got to agree with that. With casting spin gear into the winds, you don't have to worry about backlashes or anything like that. But yeah, it's not ideal. But casting ultralight lures into the winds, regardless, is, you know, not the easiest thing.
Anyway, well, that goes just as well as the other one. I'll see if getting down a little bit deeper can produce us a fish. Oh, yep, there we go.
Oh.
What have we got? At last, a fish on the BFS. It's not even big enough to pull drag. Oh, it's not a bad fish.
What have we got, little bream?
Well, it's taken long enough, but I've finally got one. Don't know what this is. See, it feels nice on this gear though, lots of control. It's a flathead.
All right, so let's hear what he's got to say to wrap up this second video, and then I'll have a few comments at the end of the video.
Well, there we go. I'm fast running out of both light and options, and apart from that one stray flathead, I didn't manage to connect with another fish. I had a couple of bumps that were almost definitely bream, but they're just not in the mood this afternoon. There's something they don't like about this weather or the conditions or whatever. I certainly can't blame the gear, because the BFS gear performed flawlessly, I've got to say. I don't know how many hundreds of casts I've made this afternoon, and I have not had a single backlash. I think I had 2 occasions where a single loop of line overran at the end of a cast that I had to pull out before I started the retrieve. And on both occasions it was either lack of attention on my part or trying to punch it up into a bit of breeze. So I've had to completely rethink my stance on BFS. All those people that told me to get out there and have another go, they were absolutely right. And thank you to all the people that gave me tips on how to get better at it, because it's just amazing how much more fun I had this afternoon by getting it right. That snap casting makes a big difference. Oh, I've drifted in under the trees. Anyway, I'm going to head back to the car and head home. That breeze is getting stronger and it's not that nice out here. I'll catch you next time. Tight lines.
All right, so what do I think? Well, not a whole heap to say. I'm glad that he went back and gave it another crack. Definitely needs to get a more BFS orientated rod. He would have even a better time with casting. The fight of the fish would be more enjoyable, even if you get some smaller stuff. But, you know, I don't know if he has some obligations with Shimano and he can't use other gear or whatever, but yeah, I think that is the thing that is holding him back. And he definitely needs to get something like a, 2 to 10 gram casting weight or something like that. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. If you've got any comments or questions, post them down below and I will catch you in the next video.